Hi, my name is Ethan, and I'm 17 years old. This Halloween, my mom and I decided to do some last-minute shopping at Walmart. Little did I know, this trip would turn into a horrifying experience. It would haunt me forever. What started as a routine errand became a descent into a nightmare, filled with encounters that defied all logic and left me questioning my sanity. It was late in the afternoon when my mom suggested we head to Walmart, pick up some candy and decorations for Halloween. The store was bustling with families doing the same, and I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. As we walked through the automatic doors, I felt a sudden chill, a cold breeze brushing against my skin. I shook it off, attributing it to the cold October weather. We split up to save time. My mom headed to the grocery section, while I went to check out the Halloween aisle. The store's fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance along the floor. I told myself it was just my imagination running wild because of the spooky season. As I walked down the Halloween aisle, I felt a strange sense of unease. The decorations seemed unusually lifelike, their eyes following me as I moved. I stopped to examine a particularly creepy animatronic witch when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A dark figure, just a blur, darting past the end of the aisle. My heart raced, and I quickly looked around. There was no one there. I shook my head, trying to dispel the growing feeling of dread. I continued down the aisle, but the sense of being watched grew stronger. I turned around and saw a figure standing at the other end of the aisle, shrouded in shadows. It was tall and seemed to be cloaked in darkness. I blinked, and it was gone. My rational mind tried to convince me it was just a trick of the light, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I hurried to find my mom, hoping the presence of another person calmed my nerves. I found her in the dairy section, examining a carton of milk. "Mom, did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "See what, Ethan?" She replied, not looking up. "There was someone in the Halloween aisle. They just disappeared." She finally looked at me, her expression a mix of concern and annoyance. "Ethan, it's Halloween. You're just spooking yourself. There's nothing to worry about." I wanted to argue, but I knew it was pointless. She wouldn't believe me, and I didn't want to cause a scene. I decided to stick close to her for the rest of the shopping trip, hoping the unsettling feeling would pass. As we moved through the store, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The lights flickered more frequently, and the shadows seemed to grow darker and more substantial. I kept seeing fleeting glimpses of the dark figure, always at the edge of my vision, never fully visible. We reached the electronics section, and I wandered off a bit to look at some video games. That's when I heard it, a low, guttural whisper calling my name. "Ethan." The sound sent a shiver down my spine. I looked around, but there was no one nearby. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Ethan." Panic set in. I backed away, bumping into a display of DVDs. The whispering stopped, replaced by a soft, mocking laughter. I turned and ran back to my mom, who was now in the checkout line. "Mom, we need to leave," I said, my voice urgent. "What's wrong with you, Ethan?" she asked, clearly irritated. "There's something wrong with this place. We have to go now." She sighed, clearly not taking me seriously. "Fine, let's just pay and get out of here." We finished checking out, and I felt a momentary sense of relief as we headed toward the exit. But as we neared the doors, they slammed shut, glass rattling with the force. The store's lights went out, plunging us into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor. The dark figure appeared again, this time standing directly in front of us. It was tall and menacing, its eyes glowing a deep, malevolent red. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath fogging up in front of me. "Mom, do you see it?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. She shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't see anything, Ethan. We need to get out of here." The figure began to move toward us, its form shifting and twisting in unnatural ways. I grabbed my mom's hand and pulled her toward the back of the store, searching for another exit. The whispers returned, now a cacophony of voices echoing through the aisles. They seemed to be coming from all directions, urging us to leave, mocking us, threatening us. We stumbled through the store, disoriented and terrified. Every corner we turned, the dark figure seemed to be there, waiting. The store's layout seemed to shift, leading us in circles, trapping us in a nightmarish maze. Finally, we found a fire exit at the back of the store. I pushed against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Desperation clawed at me as I kicked and shoved, trying to force it open. The dark figure loomed closer, its eyes burning with malice. With one final, desperate push, the door flew open, and we burst out into the cold night air. We ran to the car, my mom fumbling with the keys in her panic. We drove away from the store as fast as we could, the whispers and laughter still echoing in my ears. When we got home, my mom tried to make sense of what had happened. She still couldn't see the figure, couldn't hear the whispers, but she couldn't deny the terror she felt. We reported the incident to the store manager and the police, but they found nothing unusual. The experience left a mark on both of us. I still see the dark figure in my dreams, hear the whispers when I'm alone. My mom tries to rationalize it, but I know what I saw, what I felt. That Walmart is not just a store. It's a place touched by something dark and malevolent, something that preys on fear and thrives in the shadows. I haven't set foot in that Walmart since. The thought of going back fills me with dread. I've heard other stories, whispers of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena. Some say the land is cursed, that it holds the spirits of those who suffered and died there. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: that store is a gateway to a nightmare, a place where the boundaries between reality and horror blur. And once you've entered, it never truly lets you go. Hi, my name is Emily. For as long as I can remember, I've been a diligent worker, always seeking out opportunities to improve my situation. When I finally landed a job at Walmart, I was thrilled. The store had recently opened in our town, and it was a dream come true. Or so I thought. The day I received the job offer, I was overjoyed. I had been struggling with part-time jobs and financial instability, so a full-time position at Walmart felt like a significant breakthrough. The first few weeks were everything I had hoped for. The store was brand new, bright and clean, an energetic atmosphere. My job was in the customer service department, handling returns and customer inquiries. It seemed straightforward, and I was eager to make a good impression. About a month into the job, I began noticing strange occurrences. It started with minor things. Products would appear in odd places, and the store's intercom system would crackle with static even when it wasn't in use. At first, I brushed these off as quirks of a new store, but as time went on, the unease grew. One evening, while working the late shift alone, I heard a loud crash from the back room. I went to investigate, but the room was empty, and nothing appeared to be out of place. As I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. An old, dusty mirror had been propped up against the wall. I had never seen it before. The mirror's surface was foggy and covered in grime, but when I looked closely, I saw something unsettling. My reflection seemed to move independently, its expression one of sheer terror. The incidents continued to escalate. Items would vanish from the shelves, only to reappear in different sections of the store. I started hearing whispers and low voices, even when I was alone. I tried to document the occurrences, hoping to find a logical explanation. The store's security footage showed nothing out of the ordinary, which only added to my frustration and fear. One night, after the store had closed, I stayed behind to finish some paperwork. As I walked through the aisles, I noticed a peculiar smell, a mix of decay and something metallic. I followed the scent to the back room and discovered a small, hidden compartment behind a stack of boxes. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs and letters, all related to the previous owner of the building. The letters spoke of strange occurrences and an increasing sense of dread experienced by the previous occupant. The following weeks were a blur of fear and frustration. The store's environment became increasingly hostile. The lights flickered erratically, and the store's temperature would suddenly drop. I started seeing shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye, always disappearing when I turned to look. The whispers grew louder and more distinct, and I began to feel a constant, oppressive presence. One particularly chilling night, power went out completely, plunging the store into darkness. I was alone in the store, and the darkness was suffocating. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way through the aisles. The flashlight's beam flickered and dimmed. I heard footsteps echoing behind me and felt an icy breath on my neck. As I rounded a corner, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the aisle. It was a tall, shadowy silhouette with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. Panic set in. I rushed to the front doors, only to find that they wouldn't open. I tried to call for help, but my phone had no signal. The lights flickered back on, revealing the store in disarray. The once orderly shelves were now toppled, and the intercom system crackled with a haunting, distorted message: "You can't leave." In a state of sheer terror, I decided to escape through the back. I managed to pry open a window and squeeze through, landing outside in the cold night air. I ran to the nearest gas station, where I called the police. They arrived and conducted a thorough search, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The store was back to its usual state, and the incidents were dismissed as stress-related hallucinations. I couldn't return to Walmart after that night. Fear and anxiety had taken a severe toll on me. I resigned from the job and sought therapy to deal with the trauma. Despite the police finding nothing unusual, I am convinced that something malevolent lurked within those walls. The store continued to operate, but I never set foot inside again. The experience at Walmart was a haunting reminder of how quickly a seemingly normal environment can turn into a place of terror. The store that once promised stability and security became a nightmarish prison filled with fear and uncertainty. My time there left me with lasting scars, and I've come to believe that some places are forever tainted by the darkness they conceal. Hi, my name is Laura. What I'm about to share is not just a story, but a nightmare that has forever altered my reality. I had always dreamed of finding stable work, so when I landed a job at the newly opened Walmart in my town, I was over the moon. Little did I know that this job, which I had longed for so desperately, would become the most harrowing experience of my life. The new Walmart was the talk of the town. A massive retail space promised convenience and modernity. It was a beacon of hope in an otherwise bleak job market. I was thrilled to start, imagining a mundane routine of stocking shelves and managing customer inquiries. However, from the moment I stepped into the store, an unsettling feeling gripped me, though I brushed it off as first-day jitters. On my first night shift, I noticed an unusual chill sweeping through the aisles. The air conditioning system was supposed to keep the store comfortably cool, but tonight felt like winter had taken hold. I tried to ignore it, attributing it to the large, open spaces of the store. Yet as I walked down the electronics aisle, the cold intensified, causing my breath to fog up in front of me. It started subtly. Items on shelves would shift on their own. I would return to find rows of neatly arranged goods, scattered as if someone had searched through them in a frenzy. The store's once bright and welcoming lighting seemed to flicker with increasing frequency. At first, it was just annoying. Soon it became disconcerting. Shadows seemed to dart and twist, behaving in ways that defied the logic of the flickering lights. One night, while working the customer service desk, I heard whispers. The store was empty, save for a few lingering customers, and yet the whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. They were faint, incoherent murmurs that seemed to swirl around me. When I looked around, there was no one in sight. I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder, but when I spun around, no one was there. Determined to understand what was happening, I researched the store's history. What I uncovered was disturbing. The land on which the Walmart was built had been the site of numerous tragic events over the years. There were stories of disappearances, unexplained deaths, and dark rituals performed by a local cult. It seemed the land was cursed, and the malevolent forces that had once been summoned were now awakening. As the weeks went by, the disturbances became more pronounced. One night, while I was restocking shelves in the grocery section, I noticed an old, dusty door in the back of the store that I had never seen before. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to find a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Against my better judgment, I descended the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, and the darkness seemed to press in on me. At the bottom, I found a small, dimly lit room. On the walls were strange symbols and cryptic writings. The floor was littered with old, tattered books and artifacts. As I stepped forward, I felt a presence, a malevolent energy that seemed to watch me. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. Panic set in as I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room's temperature plummeted, and the symbols on the walls seemed to glow with an eerie light. I heard whispers growing louder, more urgent. They were no longer just murmurs, but a cacophony of voices, pleading, screaming, and threatening. I turned around to see a figure standing in the corner. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow sockets. She reached out toward me, and I could feel an icy chill emanating from her. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Instead, I felt a profound sense of dread and hopelessness, as if I was being pulled into an abyss. A surge of adrenaline. I managed to force the door open and fled up the stairs. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath came in ragged gasps. I raced back to the main floor, but the store was different. The aisles had shifted, creating an endless maze of twisted, darkened corridors. The lights flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows that seemed to reach out for me. The whispers were now deafening, a cacophony of tortured souls screaming for release. I ran through the store, desperately trying to find an exit, but every path seemed to loop back to the same nightmarish maze. In the midst of the chaos, I saw her again, a spectral woman from the basement. She was not alone. Shadows of twisted, malformed figures surrounded her, their faces contorted in pain and malice. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the ground beneath me seemed to writhe and pulse. The PA system crackled to life, and a distorted, otherworldly voice filled the store. "You cannot escape. This is your home now. You belong to us." The words sent chills down my spine. I could feel the malevolent presence closing in, the shadows tightening around me. With one final, frantic burst of energy, I smashed through the front window of the store, cutting my arms on the jagged glass. The cold night air hit me like a physical force as I crawled through the window and fell onto the parking lot. I scrambled to my feet and ran, not stopping until I reached the safety of the streetlights and the warmth of the nearby diner. I reported the events to my supervisor and local authorities, but my claims were dismissed as the ravings of a stressed and exhausted worker. No one believed me. I quit my job that day, unable to face the store or its haunting presence ever again. The Walmart remains, a chilling monument to the darkness that lurks beneath its surface. Every time I pass by the store, a shiver runs down my spine. Echoes of that night, the whispers, the shadows, and the anguished faces haunt me. The store stands as a grim reminder of the malevolent forces that once roamed its aisles, a dark entity that once had a grip on my very soul. To this day, I cannot step foot in that Walmart. The traumatic experience has left me with a deep-seated fear of the unknown, and the land on which the store stands will forever be a dark chapter in my life. Some places, I've learned, are cursed, their history steeped in suffering and darkness. And once you've encountered that darkness, it never truly lets you go. Hi, my name is Rachel, and I want to share a chilling experience I had, the new Walmart, that opened near my home. It used to be quite a drive to get to the nearest Walmart, so when I heard they were opening a new one just a few miles away, I was thrilled. What I didn't expect was the unsettling experience I would have on my first visit. The new Walmart had been open for a week, and I decided to check it out on November 5th. It was a chilly evening, and I needed to pick up a few groceries and some household supply. The store was bright and new, with gleaming floors and neatly stocked shelves. Everything seemed perfect, and I was excited about the convenience of having such a large store nearby. As I entered, I noticed that the store was quieter than usual for a Friday night. The aisles were sparsely populated, and there was a strange lack of the usual background noise. No music, no chatter from other shoppers. I brushed it off as a fluke and continued with my shopping. While I was in the produce section, I saw a man in his mid-30s, dressed in work clothes, standing nearby. He was browsing through the fruits and vegetables, but kept glancing in my direction. His behavior seemed odd. He wasn't picking anything up, just watching people. I felt uneasy, but decided to ignore it. I moved on to the dairy section, trying to focus on my shopping list. The man followed me there, still keeping his distance, but never breaking eye contact. I was becoming increasingly uncomfortable and decided to move to another part of the store. I went to the home goods section and noticed that the store's ambiance had changed. The lights flickered intermittently, and the air felt cooler. The aisles were dimly lit compared to the rest of the store. I continued browsing, trying to shake off the growing sense of unease. That's when I saw the man again. He was now standing at the end of the aisle, his posture rigid, and he seemed to be staring at me intently. I felt a surge of anxiety and quickly headed to the checkout, hoping to finish my shopping and leave. At the checkout, I noticed that the cashier seemed distracted and slightly on edge. The transaction was completed quickly, and I grabbed my bags, eager to get out of the store. As I left, I saw the man standing just outside the store's exit, still watching. I hurried to my car, my heart racing. The next day, I was still shaken by the experience, but tried to brush it off as paranoia. However, when I saw the local news, I was horrified to hear about a series of unsettling incidents reported at that very Walmart. Customers had complained about being watched and followed by a suspicious individual. The news reported that several people had reported similar experiences, leading the store to increase security and monitor the situation closely. It turned out that the man I saw was a known local troublemaker with a history of disturbing behavior. Authorities had been alerted, and the store had taken steps to address the situation. Thankfully, no one was harmed, but the incident left a mark on the community and on me. Even now, whenever I pass by that Walmart, I can't shake the feeling of dread. The store's once comforting convenience now feels tainted by the unsettling events of that night. It's a stark reminder that even in seemingly ordinary places, something sinister can lurk just beneath the surface. Hi, my name is Lisa, and I work as a cashier at Walmart. It was just another late-night shift, quiet Tuesday in October. The store, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights, felt like an isolated outpost in the encroaching darkness. The aisles were mostly empty, save for the occasional late-night shopper. But as the clock inched toward midnight, an unsettling feeling began to creep over me. It started with a drop in temperature. The HVAC system in the store was notoriously unreliable, so I didn't think much of it at first. But then, as I was restocking shelves in the toy aisle, I noticed something strange. Porcelain-faced, Victorian-era doll that I clearly remembered placing on the top shelf now lay on the floor, glassy eyes eerily fixed on me. I picked it up and returned it to its place, trying to shake off the cold shiver that ran down my spine. I continued my tasks, but the strange occurrences multiplied. In the electronics section, the televisions flickered to life, each screen showing nothing but static. When I moved to turn them off, they all went dark on their own as soon as I approached. In the grocery aisle, a line of cereal boxes toppled over in perfect unison, as if pushed by an invisible hand. I went back to the front of the store, where my coworker Mike was manning the customer service desk. "You feeling anything weird tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Mike looked up from his book and frowned. "Yeah, actually. I thought I heard someone whispering in the back, but when I checked, no one was there." We exchanged uneasy glances, but didn't dwell on it. It was a big store, and strange things happened sometimes. But the feeling of being watched persisted, growing stronger with each passing hour. Around 2 a.m., I decided to take a break. I headed to the staff room, hoping a cup of coffee would shake off the creeping dread. As I walked past the aisles, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, expecting to see a customer, but there was no one, just shadows cast by the flickering lights. Inside the staff room, I found a note on the table. It was written in a shaky hand, the ink smudged as if written in haste. "Get out," it read, in large, uneven letters. I felt a chill run down my spine. I looked around, but the room was empty. I grabbed my coffee and hurried back to the front. "Mike, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. But when I approached the customer service desk, Mike was gone. His book lay open on the counter, his chair pushed back as if he had left in a hurry. I called out his name, but there was no answer. Panic set in. I grabbed the store phone and dialed 911, but there was no signal. The ringing echoed from the back room. My heart pounded as I followed the sound, the temperature dropping sharply. My breath came out in frosty puffs, and I could see my reflection in the cold glass of the door. I pushed the door open and found the room in disarray. Shelves were overturned, papers scattered everywhere. In the center of the room was a large, old-fashioned mirror that I had never noticed before. It was covered in dust, surface cracked and stained. As I looked into it, I saw not my own reflection, a face of a woman, pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes. She mouthed the words, "Help me," before disappearing. I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of boxes. That's when I saw Mike. He was huddled in the corner, his eyes wide with terror. "Lisa, we need to get out of here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "There's something in this store, something evil." We hurried to the front, but the automatic doors wouldn't open. We were trapped. I pulled out my phone to call 911 again, but there was no signal. The lights flickered and the store plunged into darkness. We heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching us. In the darkness, I could see shadows moving, closing in on us. We backed up against the customer service desk, searching for anything to defend ourselves with. Mike grabbed a flashlight and turned it on, illuminating the aisle in front of us. What we saw made our blood run cold. The doll from earlier was standing in the middle of the aisle, its head tilted to one side, its eyes glowing a sinister red. Behind it, the shadows coalesced into the form of the woman I had seen in the mirror. She reached out a hand, and the doll began to move, walking towards us with jerky, unnatural movements. Mike swung the flashlight, hitting the doll and sending it flying across the aisle. But the woman kept coming, her eyes fixed on us. We backed away, desperate to find an escape. The air grew colder, and a low, guttural growl filled the store. Suddenly, the emergency lights flickered on, casting a dim glow over the store. We saw the exit sign at the far end of the aisle and ran for it. As we reached the doors, they finally opened, and we stumbled out into the cold night air. We didn't stop running until we reached the parking lot. We called the police, who arrived minutes later. They searched the store but found nothing unusual. The woman, the doll, and the shadows were all gone. The only evidence of the night's events was the overturned shelves and the note in the staff room. Mike and I quit our jobs the next day. We couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something truly evil. To this day, I can't walk past a Walmart without feeling it chill. I've come to believe that some places are haunted by more than just memories. Some places are touched by darkness, and once you've encountered it, it never truly lets you go. Hi, my name is Daniel, and I had a nightmarish experience at Walmart on August 14th. It was a typical shopping trip that turned into something far more terrifying than I could have imagined. I still can't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I had stopped by Walmart for a few last-minute items before closing. The store was nearly empty, save for a few other shoppers scattered throughout the aisles. I was picking up some groceries and household supplies, feeling unusually anxious for no apparent reason. As I wandered through the store, I noticed a woman who seemed out of place. She was dressed in tattered clothing and had a disheveled appearance. Her eyes were wild, and she seemed to be frantically searching the shelves, mumbling to herself. I tried to avoid her, but her behavior was unsettling. I continued shopping, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. As I reached the electronics section, I noticed that all the televisions were showing static. I thought it was strange, but assumed it was a temporary glitch. The store's lights flickered intermittently, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Suddenly, the lights went out completely, plunging the store into darkness. I heard panicked voices from other customers, and the PA system crackled with static. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an ominous glow over the aisles. I tried to make my way to the front of the store, but the layout had changed. The aisles seemed to shift and twist, and I couldn't find my way back to the entrance. The store was a labyrinth of shadowy figures and distorted aisles. As I wandered, I saw the same disheveled woman from earlier. She was standing in the middle of an aisle, her eyes fixed on me. She held a tattered book in her hands, its pages filled with strange symbols and drawings. Her face was a mask of desperation. I attempted to approach her, hoping to get some help or find out what was happening. But as I got closer, the woman's expression changed. Her eyes became dark and soulless, and she began to chant in a language I didn't understand. The store's temperature dropped suddenly, and I could see my breath in the cold air. I backed away, stumbling over a display. The aisles seemed to close in on me, and I could hear a low, guttural growl coming from somewhere in the store. I turned around and saw shadowy figures moving in the periphery of my vision. They seemed to be closing in on me, their forms shifting and changing. Desperate, I ran toward the front of the store, trying to find an exit. The front doors were locked, and the security gates had descended. I pounded on the glass, but no one seemed to hear me. The store's PA system emitted a distorted voice, repeating the phrase, "You can't leave, you're mine now." My heart pounded as I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I turned to see a group of employees, their faces blank and expressionless, slowly moving towards me. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, as if they were being controlled by some unseen force. Just as I was about to lose hope, the lights flickered back on, and the store returned to normal. The aisles were in their usual arrangement, and the customers and employees were going about their business as if nothing had happened. The woman with the book was nowhere to be seen. I left the store in a daze, feeling as if I had narrowly escaped something truly sinister. I tried to tell the store manager about the incident, but they dismissed my concerns, saying it was probably a stress-induced hallucination. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. The store was perfectly normal again, but I'm haunted by the memory of the shifting aisles, the shadowy figures, and the woman's chilling chant. Walmart may seem like an ordinary place, but sometimes it hides dark, inexplicable horrors that are only visible to those unfortunate enough to experience them. I am Jake, 34 years old, and I work as a security guard. The night shift at the local Walmart was usually uneventful, a routine patrol of the aisles, ensuring everything remained in order until the morning. The store, vast and fluorescently lit, typically held an eerie stillness after hours. But this night was different. From the moment I walked in, a sense of unease prickled at the back of my neck. It began with small, unsettling details. As I made my initial rounds, I noticed the lights in the electronics section flickering sporadically. When I approached the televisions, they all simultaneously switched to static. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a flash. Face, pale and ghostly, staring out from one of the screens. I blinked, and it was gone. I shook off the unease and continued my patrol. In the toy aisle, the shelves of dolls and stuffed animals were perfectly arranged, except for one doll that lay face down in the middle of the floor. I picked it up, intending to return it to its shelf, but as I did, I heard a faint giggle, high-pitched and sinister. I looked around, but the aisle was empty. I quickly put the doll back and moved on, my nerves on edge. As the night wore on, the unsettling occurrences became more frequent. In the houseware section, a stack of dishes inexplicably toppled over, shattering on the floor. In the grocery aisle, a row of cans fell from the shelves in perfect unison, rolling toward me like a malevolent wave. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something unseen was lurking just out of sight. Around 2 a.m., I returned to the security office to review the surveillance footage. My colleague Tom, who usually manned the monitors, was nowhere to be found. His radio lay abandoned on the desk, battery dead. I sat down and began rewinding the footage, looking for any signs of what might be causing the disturbances. What I saw made my blood run cold. Cameras captured fleeting shadows darting across the aisles, but never fully materializing. Then, in the footage from the electronics section, I saw the same face I had glimpsed earlier, pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes, staring directly at the camera. As I watched, the figure on the screen seemed to step closer, its gaze unrelenting. Suddenly, the monitor went black. I jumped back, my heart pounding. I radioed Tom. There was no response. I decided to check the break room, hoping to find him there. As I walked through the store, the air grew colder and the sense of dread intensified. The once familiar aisles now felt like a labyrinth, each turn amplifying my fear. I reached the break room and found it in disarray, chairs overturned, coffee spilled on the floor, and Tom's jacket draped over a chair, but no sign of Tom. The lights flickered, casting ominous shadows. I called out, but the only response was a faint whisper, unintelligible but chilling. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw it. Figure from the monitors, standing in the doorway. It was tall and thin, its skin a sickly gray, and its eyes empty voids. It took a step toward me, and I felt a wave of cold wash over me. I backed away, my mind racing with terror. The figure moved with unnatural speed, crossing the room in an instant. I stumbled, falling to the floor, and felt a cold hand close around my ankle. I kicked out, and the grip loosened just enough for me to scramble to my feet and run. I burst out of the break room, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Figure was right behind me, its presence a suffocating shadow. I ran through the aisles, desperately searching for an exit. The store seemed to stretch on endlessly, familiar layout now a disorienting maze. I reached the front of the store, but the automatic doors wouldn't open. Pounded on the glass, my panic rising. The figure drew closer, hollow eyes fixed on me. In a last-ditch effort, I grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed it against the door. The glass shattered, and I leaped through the opening, cutting my arms on the shards. I ran into the parking lot, not daring to look back. I reached my car, fumbled with the keys, and finally managed to start the engine. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The figure stood at the edge of the lot, watching me go, its form dissolving into the darkness. I drove to the nearest police station and recounted my ordeal. The officers listened, but when they investigated the store, they found no evidence of anything unusual. The security footage was corrupted, showing only static and distorted images. The next day, I returned to the store with a team of officers. Tom was found in the storage room, unconscious but alive. He had no memory of what happened after he left the security office. The store manager dismissed the events as a series of unfortunate coincidences, but I knew better. The experience left a scar on me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and the memory of those hollow eyes haunted my dreams. I quit my job and moved away, hoping to leave the terror behind. But sometimes late at night, I hear a faint giggle or see a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I've come to believe that some places are touched by darkness, and once you've encountered it, it never truly lets you go. The Walmart may seem like just another store, but for me, it will always be a place of nightmares, a place where the shadows come alive, and the past refuses to stay buried. I am Sarah, 21 years old, and a student studying paranormal studies at the university. My fascination with the supernatural had led me down many paths. Nothing could prepare me for what I was about to encounter at Walmart. It was a cold October evening, just days before Halloween, when I decided to make a late-night trip to Walmart. My roommate Emily had dared me to investigate the store, which was rumored to be haunted. Perfect excuse to gather material for my thesis on modern-day hauntings, I thought. Armed with my camera, voice recorder, and a few EMF meters, I set out on my paranormal adventure. Walmart was oddly quiet that night. The usual bustle of shoppers was replaced by an eerie stillness. The store was open 24 hours, but it seemed almost deserted. As I walked through the automatic doors, a shiver ran down my spine. Fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting a cold, unnatural glow over the aisles. I started my investigation by walking through the toy section, where I had heard stories of toys moving on their own. As I wandered the aisles, I noticed that the shelves were perfectly arranged, except for one doll that lay face down in the middle of the floor. I picked it up, and as I did, I felt a sudden, intense cold. My breath came out in frosty puffs, and I could see my reflection in the doll's glassy eyes. I set the doll back on the shelf and pulled out my EMF meter. The device, designed to detect electromagnetic fields, which are often associated with paranormal activity, started beeping erratically. The reading spiked and then dropped, as if something was moving around me. I decided to leave the toy section and move to the electronics aisle. As I approached the electronics section, the televisions flickered on simultaneously, displaying static. I raised my camera, capturing the bizarre phenomenon. The static cleared for a moment, and I saw a fleeting image of a gaunt, pale face staring back at me from the screen. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to rationalize what I had seen. Moving deeper into the store, I reached the grocery section. The overhead lights dimmed. I felt a growing sense of unease. I pulled out my voice recorder and began asking questions, hoping to capture any EVP, electronic voice phenomena. Is there anyone here with me? Can you tell me your name? I played back the recording and heard a faint whisper, barely audible. Get out. My hands trembled as I continued my investigation. I moved to the back of the store, where the storeroom was located. The door was slightly ajar, and a cold draft emanated from within. I hesitated. Curiosity got the better of me. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight and turned it on, revealing rows of shelves filled with boxes and supplies. Suddenly, I heard footsteps echoing through the room. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" Only response was the sound of more footsteps, closer this time. I swung my flashlight around and caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure disappearing behind a shelf. My heart raced as I followed. There was no one there. I pulled out my EMF meter again, and the readings were off the charts. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath again. I turned around to leave, but the door was stuck. Panic set in as I tried to force it open. That's when I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned, and standing before me was the gaunt figure from the television. Its eyes were hollow, and its mouth twisted into a sinister smile. "Get out," whispered again. I screamed and yanked the door open, fleeing back into the main store. I didn't stop running until I reached the front of the store, where I found Mike, the night manager. He looked at me with concern. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I tried to explain what had happened, but he seemed skeptical. "This store has always had strange occurrences, but nothing like what you're describing," he said. "Maybe you're just tired." Determined to find answers, I convinced Mike to let me continue my investigation. He reluctantly agreed, and we set up a few more cameras around the store. I reviewed the footage from the storeroom and saw the shadowy figure again, but this time it was clearer. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, almost gliding through the room. I decided to take a break and headed to the staff room. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, I noticed a framed photograph on the wall. It was an old black and white picture of the store's grand opening. In the background, barely visible, was the same gaunt figure I had seen earlier. I felt a chill run down my spine. I took the photograph to Mike and showed him the figure. His face went pale. "That's Mr. Thompson, the original owner of the store," he said. "He died under mysterious circumstances shortly after the store opened. Some say he never left." I felt a surge of excitement and fear. Could it be that the store was haunted by its original owner? I decided to do some more research and headed to the local library. There, I found old newspaper articles about Mr. Thompson's death. He had been found in the storeroom, his face twisted in terror, with no signs of a struggle. Cause of death was never determined. Armed with this new information, I returned to the store. The haunting seemed to intensify as the night wore on. The lights flickered more frequently, and I heard whispers and footsteps everywhere I went. I felt a constant presence, as if someone was watching me. I set up more equipment, including motion sensors and temperature gauges. The readings were erratic, with sudden drops in temperature and unexplained movements. I decided to conduct a seance in the hopes of contacting Mr. Thompson's spirit. Mike reluctantly agreed to join me. We gathered in the storeroom, where I set up candles and a Ouija board. We placed our hands on the planchette and began asking questions. At first, there was no response, but then the planchette started moving on its own. It spelled out, "Leave." I asked, "Why are you still here?" Planchette moved again, spelling out, "Trapped." "How can we help you?" I asked. "Free me," it spelled. The room grew colder, and the candles flickered violently. Suddenly, the planchette flew off the board, and the candles were extinguished. In the darkness, I saw the figure of Mr. Thompson standing before us. His eyes were filled with sorrow and desperation. Mike and I scrambled to relight the candle. When we did, the figure was gone. I felt a deep sense of urgency. We had to find a way to free Mr. Thompson's spirit. I remembered the photograph in the staff room and went to retrieve it. On the back was a handwritten note. "To find peace, one must uncover the truth." I realized that Mr. Thompson's death had been shrouded in mystery for a reason. There had to be something hidden in the storeroom, something that held the key to his freedom. Mike and I began searching the storeroom, checking every box and shelf. After hours of searching, we found a hidden compartment behind a stack of old boxes. Inside was a small, locked chest. We pried it open and found a diary. It belonged to Mr. Thompson. As we read through the pages, truth was revealed. Mr. Thompson had been deeply troubled, haunted by visions of a dark entity. He believed that the store was built on cursed land and that the entity had claimed his life. Final entry was chilling. I am trapped, bound to this place by the darkness. Only by revealing the truth and cleansing the land can I be free. With the diary in hand, Mike and I knew what we had to do. We needed to perform a cleansing ritual to banish the dark entity and free Mr. Thompson's spirit. We gathered sage, candles, and other items needed for the ritual. As we performed the ritual, the store seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. The lights flickered, and a powerful wind blew through the aisles, extinguishing our candles. Shadows moved around us, and we heard whispers and growls. I felt a cold hand grasp my shoulder, and I knew we were running out of time. We continued the ritual, chanting and burning the sage. The dark entity appeared before us, a mass of swirling shadows with glowing red eyes. Reached out, trying to stop us. We held our ground. With a final powerful chant, the entity let out a piercing scream and vanished. The store fell silent. The lights stabilized and the oppressive cold lifted. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Mr. Thompson's spirit appeared one last time, a look of gratitude on his face. "Thank you," he whispered before fading away. In the days that followed, the store returned to normal. The strange occurrences stopped and the air felt lighter. Mike and I shared our experience with a few trusted friends, but most people remained skeptical. A few months passed after the haunting at Walmart. My life returned to the routine of lectures, late-night study sessions, and the occasional investigation into local legends. The incident had become a defining part of my research and personal experience. However, the tranquility was short-lived. One night, I received a call from Mike. "Sarah, it's happening again," he said, his voice trembling. "The lights, the cold spots, and the whispers, they're back." I felt a chill of dread. Had we failed to completely cleanse the store? Or was there something more sinister at play? Determined to get to the bottom of it, I grabbed my gear and headed to Walmart. As soon as I stepped through the doors, the familiar cold enveloped me. Mike was waiting at the front, his face pale and drawn. "It started 2 nights ago," he explained. "At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but it's getting worse." I took a deep breath. Let's start with the basic. EMF readings, temperature checks, and see if we can capture any EVPs. We began our investigation in the toy section, where it had all started before. This time, the atmosphere felt even more oppressive. The EMF meter spiked continuously, and the cold was bone-chilling. I placed a digital thermometer on the shelf, and the temperature dropped rapidly, far below what could be explained by a faulty HVAC system. I pulled out my voice recorder. "Is there anyone here with us? Can you tell us why you've returned?" We played back the recording and heard a faint, distorted voice. "Help. Me," whispered, sending shivers down my spine. This voice was different from Mr. Thompson's. It was filled with pain and fear. Mike and I exchanged worried glances. "Do you think it's another spirit?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied, "but we need to find out." We decided to dig deeper into the store's history. I returned to the library and pored over old newspapers and public records. I discovered that before Walmart was built, the land had been home to a small community. There were reports of a series of mysterious disappearances in the area, which had remained unsolved. One name stood out: Alice Turner, a young woman who had vanished in 1965. Her family had reported strange occurrences in their home leading up to her disappearance. Old spots, objects moving on their own, and whispers in the night. It was chillingly similar to what we were experiencing at Walmart. I contacted Alice's last surviving relative, her niece Karen, who was willing to meet with me. Karen recounted the family's torment. Alice was terrified in the days before she disappeared, Karen said. She kept saying she saw someone in her room at night, but no one believed her. I felt a deep sense of sorrow and urgency. Could Alice's spirit be trapped in Walmart, seeking help? And if so, how could we free her? Armed with this new information, I returned to Walmart. Mike and I prepared for another cleansing ritual, this time specifically aimed at helping Alice. We set up in the center of the store, hoping to reach her spirit. As we began the ritual, the store seemed to come alive with energy. The lights flickered violently, and a strong wind howled through the aisles. Shadows danced on the walls, and we heard the familiar whispers, growing louder and more desperate. "Please, Alice, If you're here, show yourself, I called out, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Temperature plummeted and a figure materialized before us. It was a young woman, her face etched with fear and sadness. "Help me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're here to help you, Alice," I said gently. "What do you need us to do?" She pointed towards the storeroom. "There, something evil." We followed Alice's spirit to the storeroom, where the air grew even colder. The darkness seemed to press in around us, and the sense of malevolence was overwhelming. In the far corner, hidden behind a stack of old boxes, we found a small, ancient-looking chest. As we opened the chest, a blast of icy wind knocked us back. Inside was an old, leather-bound book. The pages were filled with symbols and incantations, in a language I didn't recognize. It radiated a dark energy, and I realized it was the source of the evil that had plagued the land for decades. "We need to destroy this," I said, my voice shaking. "It's the key to freeing Alice and cleansing this place once and for all." But as we prepared to burn the book, the shadows in the room seemed to come alive. A dark figure emerged, its form shifting and twisting. It was the entity that had tormented Mr. Thompson and trapped Alice. "You cannot defeat me," it hissed, its voice a chorus of agony and despair. Mike and I stood our ground. "We will free them," I said firmly. "You have no power here." We began chanting the cleansing ritual, holding the book over the flames. The entity screeched in rage, lashing out at us with tendrils of darkness. But we continued, our voices growing stronger. As the book caught fire, the entity let out a final, ear-piercing scream and vanished. The temperature in the room rose, and the oppressive darkness lifted. Alice's spirit appeared once more, her face now peaceful. "Thank you," she whispered before fading away. It had been a year since we had freed Alice's spirit and cleansed Walmart of the dark entity that had haunted it for decades. Life had returned to normal, or so I thought. One night, as I was studying in my dorm, my phone rang. It was Mike. "Sarah, it's happening again," he said, his voice filled with dread. "We need to come back." My heart sank. Had we not fully defeated the entity? I grabbed my gear and rushed to Walmart. As soon as I stepped through the doors, I felt the familiar chill. The lights flickered, and the store seemed to hum with an eerie energy. Mike met me at the entrance, his face pale and drawn. "It started a few days ago. At first, it was just small things, but now it's worse than ever. I think we might have missed something." Determined to get to the bottom of it, we decided to re-examine the store's history. We returned to the library and pored over old records once more. As we dug deeper, we discovered something we had overlooked. A series of cryptic entries in Mr. Thompson's diary that we had dismissed as ramblings. They spoke of a hidden chamber beneath the store, a place where he believed the true source of the darkness resided. We returned to Walmart and began our search for the hidden chamber. After hours of searching, we found a hatch in the floor of the storeroom, concealed under a stack of old boxes. We pried it open and descended into the darkness below. The air in the chamber was thick and suffocating, and the walls were lined with strange symbols and runes. In the center of the room stood an ancient altar, covered in dust and cobwebs. The air was heavy with a sense of malevolence, and I felt a deep sense of unease. We approached the altar, and as we did, the shadows in the room seemed to come alive. A dark figure materialized before us, its form shifting and twisting. It was the entity, more powerful and enraged than ever. "You thought you could defeat me," hissed, its voice echoing through the chamber. "But you have only angered me." Mike and I stood our ground. "We're here to finish what we started," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The entity let out a chilling laugh. "You are fools. This place is mine, and I will never leave." We knew we had to act quickly. I pulled out the cleansing ritual we had used before, but the entity was ready. It lashed out at us with tendrils of darkness, knocking the ritual items from our hands. The air grew colder, and the walls of the chamber seemed to close in around us. "Mike, we need to find another way," I shouted, dodging a swipe from the entity. Mike's eyes widened with realization. "The symbols, they're binding it here." We began frantically searching the walls, looking for a way to disrupt the runes and break the entity's hold. The entity howled in rage, its attacks becoming more frenzied. It grabbed a piece of chalk and started defacing the symbols, hoping to weaken its power. As we disrupted the ruins, the entity's form flickered and wavered. It let out a deafening roar, and the ground beneath us shook. The air grew colder, and I could feel the entity's fury, but we continued, determined to see it through. As we worked, I noticed a small hidden compartment in the altar. Inside was a book, ancient and weathered, filled with dark incantations. It was the source of the entity's power. With trembling hands, I pulled it out and began to read, searching for a way to banish the entity once and for all. The entity, realizing what we were doing, unleashed a final, desperate attack. Shadows swirled around us, and I felt a cold hand grasp my shoulder. I fought through the fear and continued reading, chanting the banishment spell aloud. The room shook violently, and the entity screamed in agony. Its form disintegrated, and the shadows dissolved into nothingness. The air grew warm, and the oppressive darkness lifted. We had done it. The entity was gone. The chamber fell silent, and the atmosphere lightened. We climbed back up to the store, exhausted but victorious. Mike and I shared a look of relief, knowing that we had finally put an end to the haunting. In the days that followed, the store returned to normal. Strange occurrences stopped, and the sense of malevolence was gone. I wrote a detailed account of our final battle with the entity, and it became a cornerstone of my thesis on paranormal activity. Walmart, for me, would always be a place of mystery and wonder. It was where I had faced true darkness and helped bring peace to tormented souls. And though the memories of that night still sent chills down my spine, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that I had made a difference. In the end, I learned that the world is filled with mysteries, and the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we might think. Sometimes the most ordinary places can hold the darkest secrets, and it is our duty to uncover the truth and bring light to the shadows. I am Jessica, 21 years old. I am a student of architectural history. This is the chilling account of what I uncovered at Walmart, a place where secrets lay hidden beneath the mundane. It was late September when my professor, Dr. Reynolds, assigned our class a project on the history of commercial architecture. I want you to investigate how old buildings adapt to modern uses, he instructed. Focus on the changes that might conceal their original purposes. My interest peaked when I chose Walmart for my research. I had heard rumors about strange occurrences in our local store, but I brushed them off as urban legend. Still, there was something intriguing about exploring a place that was supposed to be so ordinary, might hold secrets beneath its fluorescent lights. I visited the Walmart on Main Street, equipped with a camera, notebook, and my curiosity. The store was a typical big box retailer, with its rows of neatly arranged products and bustling customers. I was taken aback by the occasional cold spot and flickering lights, but I attributed them to the store's aging infrastructure. While examining the store layout, I noticed an old, locked door in the back storage area, partially obscured by a display of cleaning supplies. The door had no sign or indication of what lay behind it. My curiosity was piqued, but the door was firmly locked. Determined to uncover more, I delved into the building's history. My research revealed that the Walmart had been built on the site of an old industrial complex that had been abandoned for decades before the store was constructed. Records showed vague references to renovations and demolitions, but nothing concrete about what had been left behind. I contacted a local historian, Mrs. Callahan, provided me with more disturbing information. The industrial complex was involved in controversial research, she said, voice trembling. They were rumored to conduct experiments that were never made public. There were whispers of strange occurrences and people going missing. My heart raced. Would the locked door be hiding something related to these experiments? Returning to Walmart, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The store's atmosphere felt different, heavier. My EMF meter, which I brought out of curiosity, began to spike whenever I approached the storage area. The cold spots grew more pronounced, and I began to hear faint whispers, like voices carried on the wind. Determined to investigate, I discreetly obtained a key to the storage area from a friendly employee who claimed to have never seen the door unlocked. One night, after the store closed, I crept into the storage area and approached the locked door. With the key in hand, I unlocked the door and entered a narrow, dark passage. The air was thick and musty, and the walls were lined with old, faded signs and warnings. The passage led to a hidden staircase descending into darkness. I descended cautiously, my flashlight barely cutting through the thick darkness. The stairs ended in a large underground room, its walls covered with faded diagrams and scribbled notes. A massive metal door stood at the far end, marked with an ominous symbol, a circle with interlocking lines. My heart pounded as I approached the door, feeling a powerful, unsettling energy emanating from it. I managed to pry it open with difficulty. Inside was a laboratory frozen in time. Old equipment lay scattered about, covered in dust. The air was thick with a lingering acrid smell. On a central table, I found vials containing dark, unsettling substances and strange instruments whose purpose I could only guess. I noticed a series of photographs pinned to a corkboard. They depicted human subjects in various states of distress, their eyes wide with terror. The experiments had clearly been inhumane, and the subjects had been subjected to unimaginable horrors. As I examined the photographs, a sudden noise behind me made me freeze. I turned to see shadowy figures flickering at the edge of my vision. Temperature dropped drastically, and the lights on my camera flickered. The whispers grew louder, echoing around me. From the darkness emerged a grotesque figure, its form shifting and pulsating. It was neither human nor entirely of this world, its features a horrifying amalgamation of twisted shapes and eyes. The whispers coalesced into a single, mournful wail. "You should not have come here," it intoned, its voice like the scraping of metal on stone. "You have disturbed our rest." I tried to back away, but the room seemed to close in on me. The figure moved closer, and the sense of dread was suffocating. I could feel the overwhelming presence of the souls trapped by these experiments, their anguish palpable. Desperate to escape, I grabbed a vial from the table and threw it at the entity. It shattered, releasing a burst of light and a strange, disorienting noise. The entity recoiled, its form flickering and distorting. Using the distraction, I fled back up the stairs and through the hidden passage, the whispers growing fainter behind me. I locked the door behind me, my hands trembling. The passage seemed to close off, and I was left alone in the storage area, gasping for breath. I left Walmart, shaken and horrified by what I had discovered. I reported my findings to the authorities, but the underground laboratory had been sealed off, and the Walmart management claimed ignorance of any unusual activity. In the months that followed, I continued to investigate other sites, but Walmart remained a haunting memory. The store continued its daily operations, hidden horrors forever concealed behind a veneer of normalcy. The experience left a deep mark on me. I realized that some places hold secrets too dark to be fully revealed, and that the mundane can mask profound and terrifying truths. The Walmart on Main Street continued to operate. For those who knew the truth, it was a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface. Sometimes, the most ordinary places hide the most extraordinary horrors, and the line between the known and the unknown can be terrifyingly thin.